Greetings, YouTube! The Doctor is in. Dr. Urias Papers here, coming at you with another commentary on Dungeons and Dragons. And we are going to talk about a banger of a topic today. So, it turns out the reason that monster statistics fall apart in D&D 5th edition was due to a design flaw before D&D 5th edition was even released. What was that flaw? Well, it was 100% lack of communication with the design team. Who was the lead for the monster manual? How did this information come to light? We will talk about that and much, much more today. So stay tuned and don't go away. All right, so a couple of days ago, I had an interaction. I came across a tweet on X. I guess it's an X now, something like that. And it was somebody that I kind of follow. It was on there, asking about certain monsters, and they were asking about a Baylor, which is a demon that is in D&D 5th edition. And of all people that responded to this, Mike Merles is one of the people that responded to this, and he came out with his version of the Baylor that he had created for 5th edition. It was a new working of the Baylor. And I responded to him and I said, well, why was this not put in to 5th edition in the first place? Why was this back in 2013 and 14 when you guys were making the 5th edition rework? Why was this kind of formatting and statistics for these monsters not put in here? And Mike responded. We're going to talk about his response. But first, what I do want to do is I want to talk about who is Mike Merles. So Mike Merles, at this point, does not work for Wizards of the Coast. But he did. And he worked for Wizards of the Coast for quite a long time. He's got credits. This is his Wikipedia page, by the way. So he worked for Wizards of the Coast from 2005 to 2023. That's 18 years. That's a long time. And he was essentially let go, at least according to this. He was essentially laid off in December 2023. He did a short stint with Chaosium after that, which is the company that makes things like Pendragon and RuneQuest and as we all know, Call of Cthulhu as well. So he has some credits in 3rd edition. He's got quite a few credits in 4th edition. He was the lead for the 4th edition Essentials, which is basically the back end of 4th edition, right when they were starting to think about 5th edition, to start the design for 5th edition. And then, of course, Mike Merles was the lead designer behind 5th edition. So he was the guy that came up with most of the rules and most of the new mechanics, the formatting, all of the layouts, everything for 5th edition, particularly for the Player's Handbook and the DMG, which is where most of that's most of where the meat is for the game. That is the statistics and the actual system rules themselves. So let's take a look at this first thing here. These are the credits from the Player's Handbook 2014. You can see that right there. And there's Mike Merles, D&D lead designers Mike Merles and Jeremy Crawford. Mike Merles really was the lead designer for this. And even though it says Player's Handbook lead was Jeremy Crawford, it was really Mike Merles that came up with all of the rules for this. And then we can go to the Dungeon Master's Guide designers, D&D lead designers Mike Merles and Jeremy Crawford. Again, this was mostly Mike Merles that came up with these. And the rest of these guys were all essentially on the team. And there's James Wyatt. James Wyatt was big in 3rd edition. Jeremy Crawford and Chris Perkins came around 4th edition-ish. Chris Perkins has been there for quite some time. He did do some 3rd edition stuff. But the guy I want to point out here that had the most sway over the Dungeon Master's Guide and the Player's Handbook was Mike Merles. Now, if we go to the credits of the Monster Manual, Lead designer and lead rules developer were Chris Perkins and Jeremy Crawford. There's their names right there. And you don't see Mike Merle's name in here anywhere. Now, these books all essentially came out around the same time. Mike Merle's is down here under story development now. So his name has been pushed down. He was on the team, but I don't think that he was in on any of the lead stuff that happened. D&D lead designers, that was Mike Merle's, a lot of the ideas that came here. So let's take a look at these tweets and this X interaction that I had this week with Mike Merle's. So here is the first set of responses that piqued my interest. The first one comes from Newbie DM. It says, hot take, traditional dungeon crawls are almost impossible to have fun with in 5th edition, 5e. The rules don't support it well. The length of combat certainly make it a slog. They are not much fun. Agree. Now, one thing I do disagree with this. I have done dungeon crawls. Combats do take a little long, but they were long in 3rd edition too. I mean, and 4th edition also had a lot of statistics in them. So it really isn't that different between 3rd, 4th, and 5th edition. I think where statistics kind of really fell apart, and we've all seen this, is that as characters get higher level, the monster statistics just don't match. They just don't scale along with the characters enough, and things just are not challenging. I think things start to break down around 6th or 7th level. They really come into focus as to breaking down statistically at around 10th or 11th level, and then they're full on different at 13th or 14th level. So Mike responds to this. Here's Mike Merles. He said, built an entire new system for monsters to make it work for me. Here's the Baylor I just statted up. Double the monster's hit points and damage. So this Baylor has an AC of 19. It has 598 hit points. It says plus 12 to tests. I'm going to assume that means it's plus 12 to all of its different rolls. And then it's got all these different abilities. I do like the initiative cascade that he has, where on initiative 25 it does a thing, and then it does another thing on initiative 20, and it does another thing on initiative 15, and another thing on initiative 10. So it's doing multiple things every round. Some of those are doing damage, some of those are not. Like, for instance, on initiative 20, it gets 4 melee or ranged attacks, plus 14, does a whole bunch of damage, and it pulls things like that. That, to me, seems very 4th edition. Mike was very much into 4th edition. So I responded to him, and I said, why wasn't this built into 5e or 5.5 originally? Because these statistics are very different than the Baylor in the Monster Manual. Let's take a look at that really quick. So this is the Legacy Baylor from the original Monster Manual from 2014. It's still got a 19 armor class. It's only got 262 hit points. We're going to talk about that. It's a challenge rating 19. It's got a proficiency bonus of plus 6. That's pretty standard. And then it's got a multi-attack where it makes 2 attacks. One with its longsword and one with its whip. And that's it. It's got a fire aura. It's got some magic resistance. And it's doing roughly, I would say, if it's attacking with its longsword and it's attacking with its whip and it hits with both, it essentially is going to do about 50 to 60 points of damage. And for a challenge rating 19, that's not really high. And that is a trend that we're going to see with monsters from the 5th edition and 5.5, because we've got the 5.5 one right here, and it doesn't look very different. Instead of 282 hit points, it's got 287 hit points, but it's essentially doing the same amount of damage. The Flame Whip makes 1 Flame Whip and 1 Lightning Blade attack, so this is 35 points of damage, and then 56 points of damage, 78 points of damage for a challenge rating 19. That's not fantastic. And those are only if it hits as well. So it's still got a hit. It's got a pretty good roll to hit. A plus 14 is pretty good, but that's about what it should be. But again, it's about the same. The hit points are nowhere near it's supposed to be, and I don't even think the armor class is where it's supposed to be, because most of the characters that are at 19th level they're going to have plus 10 or higher to hit, meaning they're going to hit more than 50% of the time. And a group of 19th level characters are easily going to be able to take this out in a round if it is a good group. And I'm talking about a group of 4 or 5 players. So those are the creatures that are there. And then we see Mike's version of this. And Mike's version of this has an AC of 19, 598 hit points. It's still got a plus 14 to hit. And then it's going to do all kinds of damage because it's got all these different attacks during the entire combat round. So again, what did I say to him? I said, why wasn't this built into 5e or 5.5 originally? And Mike came back, and I don't think he meant to say this, but he did, said time and communication, exclamation point. We only had so much time to finish the game. What ended up in the monster manual was not the design intent. 100% due to lack of clear communication. For 5.5, I was not involved in any way, which also is another admission. So the guy that originally designed most of 5th edition was not involved in anything that had to do with 5.5, because he was essentially, I would say by December of 2023, they were very seriously thinking about, if not starting, the rework. Mike was working for Magic the Gathering at the time, so he had been moved. And let's take a look at that. He had been moved, and that's documented here in this Wikipedia page. So in 2020, he was moved. In 2019. So before COVID, he was moved and was replaced with Ray Winninger as the executive producer in charge of Dungeons & Dragons in 2020. And then he was moved over to Magic the Gathering. And he had something to do with Baldur's Gate 3, the video game. I guess he helped develop the story and the system support. And then he was laid off in December 2023. I contend by December 2023 that Wizards was very much in the throes of creating the new edition, and by the time he had moved over to Magic the Gathering, they had really probably were thinking about it in 2020. And around December 2023, that whole year of 2023 is when we started getting all the OGL stuff. So that's another thing. So these are very profound statements here by Mike Mearls, the lead designer for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, that the monster manual was not the design intent, and it was 100% due to lack of clear communication. I said, wow, that is a deep admission. I'm going to assume that Chris Perkins and Jeremy Crossman are responsible for that lack of clear communication. Reasoning I am saying that is because you can see right here, lead designers, Chris Perkins and Jeremy Crawford, they were leading the team. And so they were responsible for the lack of communication situation, since they are the lead designers listed on the Monster Manual. Says a lot about their management skills. Now, Mike backs this up and says, I don't think it's fair to say this person or that did anything wrong. Everyone was working on tight deadlines. Perfect is the enemy of done, and we needed to get that book finished. It was a Herculean effort across the board. So I did come back and have a little bit more to say about this, and I said, wow, wow, that was a deep admission. He tried to back that up a little bit, and I said, appreciate the attempted backtracking. However, your original comment had highlighted the problems. That is a lack of clear communication and design intent. Also appreciate your attempted bus driving backwards. When problems happen, it is leadership that is at fault. Perkins and Crawford were in the lead. So those are two different statements. You can make the connection between those if you want. But it was clear to me in Mike's original response to me that the monster manual was not what they wanted to end up with, and 100% due to lack of clear communication. So we got a book where the statistics didn't really kind of match up, and now we kind of know why statistics in D&D 5th edition fall apart. So I want to dive a little bit deeper into that, and I want to take a look at a few things that match up primarily with this structure of monster that Mike has created here, because there are rules. These rules are not in the 5.5 DMG. They are in the original 2014 DMG, but there are rules for creating monsters, and it is rules of a statistical table, and that table does not necessarily match what is translated into the monster manual. So let's take a deep dive into that. All right, here is the table that I am talking about. It's in Chapter 9, Dungeon Master's Workshop of the 2014 5th edition, not 5.5, not 2024, 2014 5th edition Dungeon Master's Workshop. This particular chapter is not really in the new Dungeon Master's Guide. It doesn't have clear rules. It doesn't have clear guidance on how to create monsters or create NPCs or things like that. They're kind of generic. It just kind of says create your own thing. But we got this table, and I want to highlight a few things on this table. So it lists CRs, proficiency bonuses, armor class, hit points, attack bonus, damage per round, this is an important one, and save DCs for each one of these challenge ratings. Now, it's kind of cumbersome if you look at this, but you're supposed to look at the defensive challenge, read to the hit points, you come to the hit points you want, you look at the armor class, and then you look at the challenge rating, and then you look down at the damage per round, then you go to the attack bonus, and you get the challenge rating there. You average those challenge ratings out, and that is the challenge rating. But if you look at, say, a challenge rating 9, so we're going to look at a monster at challenge rating 9 and a monster at challenge rating 10. A monster at challenge rating 9 should have a proficiency bonus of +4, should have an armor class around 16, it should have 191 to 205 hit points, should have around a +7. Now, these can go up and down, like 1, so but it should have around a +7. It should be doing 57 to 62 points of damage per round and should have a save DC of 16 for any abilities that players need to save for. My contention with this is if you look at, basically you look at any of these CRs, but particularly ones that fall between 7 and 15, if you look at any of those and you look at the hit points of the creatures that are listed here versus the hit points of the creatures that are listed in the monster manual, they are typically 30 to 50% lower than this. And if you look at the damage per round, which here for a challenge rating 9 is 57 to 62 points, again, it is typically 30 to 50% lower than what it is here. So let's take a look at a level 9 monster. This is the Clay Golem. It's the legacy version, which is the one that comes from the monster manual. And it is a challenge rating 9 with a 14 armor class, okay? So right away, that doesn't really match. This says 16. All right. And then it has 133 hit points. That also doesn't really match because it says here 191 to 205. I mean, that's quite a bit lower. It says it's supposed to have around a +7, and this monster has a +8. Okay, so that's okay. That's around a +7. And it also says that it's supposed to be doing 57 to 62 points of damage per round. So if, it gets 2 slam attacks, and this creature does 16 points per slam attack. So that's 32 points. And then it's got a con save, DC 15. This is around where we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be around a DC 16. But again, we got 32 damage per round, and we've got 133 hit points. where we're supposed to be at 191 to 205, and we're supposed to be at 57 to 62. Now, if we were to go look at the hit points, we would be down here at a challenge rating 5, and we would be there again, challenge rating 4 or 5 for damage per round. And changing that armor class, and we're at the armor class where we're supposed to be. We're at a 14, and we're at a 15. So this is technically, this is really not a challenge rating 9. This is like at least 3 levels lower than that, if not 4. So statistically, this creature does not match up. All right, let's look at another challenge rating 9 creature. All right, here's our next challenge rating 9 creature. This is, again, from the Legacy 2014 rules. It is a Glabrezu Demon, challenge rating 9. This one says armor class of 17. And for challenge rating 9, that's about right. Okay, that one fits. We're supposed to have 191 to 205 hit points. This has 157. So again, that is about 40 hit points shy. That's about 40 hit points shy. And so that's quite a bit. That's quite a bit lower. It's supposed to have a +7 to hit. This has a +9 to hit, so it's a little bit better at hitting, 10% better. It gets 4 attacks, 2 with pinchers and 2 with its fists. So, okay, 2 pinchers. If it hits with both, it's going to do 32 points. And then if it hits with both of its fists, it's going to do another 14 on average. So 32 plus 14 is 46. Is that where we're supposed to be? No. Again, that's a lot lower. So, when I say 30 to 50% lower, these two statistics really, really demonstrate that. So if we were to look at this creature realistically, it might be a challenge rating 7, not really a challenge rating 9. So this is another example of a kind of classic creature that isn't really where it's supposed to be challenge rating wise. So let's look at one creature at challenge rating 10. All right, this one's a pretty good example. It's a lawful good creature. It's a Guardian Naga. It is a challenge rating 10, but we're only concerned really with the statistics in this. And this should fit those statistics. So it's got an armor class of 18, 127 hit points. So where does the table say that we are supposed to be at 10? We're supposed to be around a 17 armor class. Okay, we're there. We're 18. We're a little bit higher. And we're supposed to be at 206 to 220 hit points. This thing's missing about 100 hit points. So that, again, that's really off. That's very much off. Now, it has spells, and it has quite a few spells. It does have Flame Strike, so that could do a good amount of damage. It's not really going to do a whole lot. So its saving throw DCs are 16. We're actually at a 16, so that's okay. And then it gets 1 attack. So what's the average damage a challenge rating 10 creature is supposed to be? 63 to 68 per round. Per round is the average amount of damage it's supposed to do. This one does 8. 8 damage. With the DC 15 con, that should be a little bit higher. And then it does 45 if you fail that save. So 53. And 53 is not 63 to 68. So we're very low on the hit points. We're very low on the damage per round. Let's take a look at one more challenge rating. Another classic creature, challenge rating 10, Stone Golem. AC of 17. Okay, that's about where we're supposed to be. Hit points at 178. Is that where we're supposed to be? That is a big no. We're supposed to be at 206 to 220. Again, that's like 30% lower than what it's supposed to be. We're supposed to be around a +7. This is a +10, so that's higher to hit. It gets 2 slam attacks for 38 points of damage, and that is not even close to where we're supposed to be. That's almost half of where we're supposed to be on damage. So again, these statistics just don't match up. A group of 4 to 5 10th level characters are going to make mincemeat out of this. Complete and utter mincemeat. They're all going to have magical weapons, so this doesn't matter. They're still going to be doing a ton of damage. Its saving throws are not that great. and they're going to be able to very easily hit it. A group of 10th level characters, your average 10th level character is going to have a +9 or +10 to hit. And it's going to, I mean, that means it needs a 7 or 8 to hit. So, you know, it's going to hit just about every time. Many attacks. Fighters are going to have 2 attacks. They can action surge. Paladins are going to have 2 attacks. Barbarians are going to, all the martial classes are going to have 2 attacks. They're going to go rip through this on damage-wise in probably less than a round if they go first. And this thing's got a terrible deck, so it's going to have a horrible initiative. So again, you know, Mike, the way that he fixed this stuff is these things don't have initiative. They go on certain initiatives automatically. I think that's a good fix. That is a very good fix. But it doesn't sound like Mike had a whole lot to do with the monster manual, and things just became too easy. This does not follow the statistics that were put down in the Dungeon Master's Guide. They just don't follow it. And I would really advise people to use this table as a baseline to adjust monsters in 5th edition and 5.5, even though this is not a 5.5 book, and maybe adopt what Mike Merles was suggesting, in that don't roll initiative for creatures. Have them have different activities on different initiatives. And that way they do get to at least act once in a round. You know, doubling the hit points, I think, is an important step. I think that's really an important step. This really is not even enough either for 10th level characters. Maybe increasing the AC. I think some of these statistics, even in this table, are a little low. But, you know, all in all, the point of all this is that the reasoning that we got what we got in the Monster Manual is they ended up with a Monster Manual that was not the design intent, and it was 100% due to a lack of clear communication with the team. And the team leads, and who were the team leads at the time on that? Well, Chris Perkins and Jeremy Crawford were the team leads. Mike Merles is down here on story development, which meant he was probably writing some of the ecology for some of the monsters or something. So it is what it is, but that's what we got. All right, that is the video that I have for everybody today. I appreciate everybody tuning in, and I will catch everybody later.